Hi, today we're going to be learning about solving equations with brackets. This is a section that you should have already done before, so I'm just going to remind you about how it works and we're going to practice some examples, and then I'm also going to expand on what you should already know by going a bit further. Okay, so let's start with reminding you about how we solve equations with brackets, the process that we need to follow. First, you need to expand the brackets. So you need to use the distributive property to multiply out the terms inside the brackets to remove the brackets to get rid of them. Then once you have no brackets left, you need to rearrange the terms in the equation so that you have variables on one side of the equation and you have all the constants on the other side of the equation, or the terms without the variables on the other side of the equation. When you do this, you have to do the same thing on both sides of the equation. So if you remove a term by adding it on one side, you have to do the same thing on the other side. If you remove a term by subtracting on one side, you have to subtract the same term on the other side as well. So whatever you do on one side, you have to do the same thing on the other side of the equation to maintain equality. Once you've done that, you need to then simplify the terms on both sides of the equation by combining the like terms so that you end up with a variable on one side equal to a constant on the other side. And then once you've done that, you need to isolate the variable. You need to get rid of its coefficient by dividing both sides of the equation by the coefficient. Okay, so now we're going to go and do an example. In this example, we've got 2 times x minus 3 in brackets plus 3 times x minus 4 in brackets equal to 6 times x minus 2 in brackets plus 5. Okay, so let's have a look at how we would solve this equation. So first of all, I need to get rid of my brackets. I need to multiply them out. So I'm going to be multiplying the 2 into the first set of brackets. So I've got 2 times x, that is 2x, and then 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Then I go on to my next set of brackets. I've got plus 3 times x, that is plus 3x, and then 3 times negative 4 is minus 12. Then on the other side of my equation, so it's equals, then I've got 6 times x, that is 6x, and 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, and then I've got plus 5 over here. Okay, so once I've got rid of all of the brackets by multiplying them out, I now need to go and rearrange my equation. So I'm going to move all the terms that have x to one side. We normally move the terms with x to the left and the constants to the right. It's not essential to do it that way, it just flows a little bit easier. So I'm going to move all the terms with the x to the left. So I'm going to keep the 2x over here. I'm going to keep the positive 3x over here. Then over here, I've got 6x. I need to remove it by subtracting the 6x on this side. So that means I need to subtract 6x on the other side as well. So I'm going to have minus 6x over here. That's equal to, now on this side, I've got negative 12 and positive 5, which don't have x's. And then I also need to bring these two terms over here that don't have x's, get rid of them on this side. So over here, the negative 6, I need to get rid of it, so I need to add 6. So I need to add 6 on this side as well. So I've got plus 6. And then over here, I've got negative 12. So I need to, again, add 12 on the left-hand side. So I must add 12 on the right-hand side to keep it equal. Okay, so now I'm going to go and simplify the two sides of my equation. So I've got 2x plus 3x minus 6x. That gives me negative x equal to, over here I've got negative 12 plus 5 plus 6 plus 12. So the negative 12 and the positive 12 are going to cancel each other out. So I just have 5 plus 6, and that gives me 11. Okay, so once I've done that, I'm not done yet because I need to know what x is. I don't want to know what negative x is. I want to know what positive x is. So to get positive x, I'm going to have therefore x equals, I'm going to divide by the coefficient of x. So if the coefficient is negative 1, I need to divide both sides by negative 1. So that's going to be 11 divided by negative 1, which gives me negative 11. And then this becomes positive x because I divided by negative 1 as well. So I have x equal to negative 11. So that's how we would solve that equation. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a few that you're going to do for yourself. Here's the first one that you're going to do. You've got 8 equal to 4 multiplied by 2x minus 3 in brackets. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this equation. Okay, let's go through that question. So the first thing I need to do is I need to multiply out these brackets to get rid of them. So I'm going to have 8 equals, and then I multiply the 4 in here, and that gives me 4 times 2x is 8x, and then 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. Okay, so once I've done that, I need to get all my x's on one side and all the constants on the other side. Now, like I said, you can work with the x's on the right and the constants on the left. I prefer to do it the other way around. So I'm going to remove the 8x from the right by subtracting it, which means I must do the same thing on the left as well. So I'm going to have negative 8x. This 8 isn't going to be here anymore, so I'm not going to write that. Then over here, I've got negative 12, and I'm going to remove the 8 from here by subtracting it, which means I must do the same thing on the right. So I've got minus 8. So over here, I've got negative 8x equal to negative 20. Now, once I've done that, I need to isolate the x by dividing by its coefficient. So I'm going to divide by negative 8 on both sides of the equation. So that gives me x equals negative 20 divided by negative 8. And negative divided by negative is going to be positive. And then I get 20 over 8. Now, I can't leave it as 20 over 8 because that's not simplified. I can simplify that by dividing both the 20 and the 8 by 4. So I'm going to have x equal to 20 divided by 4 is 5. Over 8 divided by 4 is 2. So for that question, you should have got 5 over 2 for x. Okay, let's go on to the next one. For question B, we've got 2 times x plus 3 in brackets minus 5 equal to 3x plus 4. I'm going to give you 1 minute for this question as well. Okay, let's go through that question. So first I need to multiply out my brackets over here. So 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 3 is plus 6. Then I've got minus 5 equal to 3x plus 4. Okay, so once I've done that, I need to get all the terms with x on one side and all the terms without x on the other side. So I have 2x over here. Then I'm going to get rid of these over here, and then I'm going to put them over there. Then over here, I've got 3x I need to get rid of, so I'm going to subtract 3x on this side, which means I need to subtract 3x on the left as well. Equal to, then over here I've got 4. Then over here I have to subtract 6 to get rid of it, so I'm going to subtract 6 on the right as well. Then I had to add 5 to get rid of this term, so I need to add 5 over here as well. So I've got 2x minus 3x, that is negative x, equals 4 minus 6 plus 5, that gives me 3. And then now I need to get rid of this negative because I don't want to know what negative x is, I want to know what x is. So I'm going to divide by negative 1 on both sides. That's going to be x equals 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3. So that's what you should have got for question B. Right, let's go on to the next one. In question C, we've got 2 multiplied by x plus 5 equal to 4 multiplied by x minus 1. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this equation. Okay, so let's go through that question. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go and multiply out. So I've got 2 times x, that is 2x. 2 times 5 is plus 10, equals, then over here I've got 4 times x, that is 4x. And 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Okay, so now I need to get my x's on one side. So over here I've got 2x, and then I need to subtract 4x on both sides. Then over here I've got negative 4, and I need to subtract 10 on both sides. And now I have 2x minus 4x, that gives me negative 2x. And on the right hand side I've got negative 4 minus 10, that gives me negative 14. And now I need to go and divide by negative 2 on both sides to isolate the x. So I have x equals negative 14 divided by negative 2, and negative divided by negative is positive, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So you should have got x equals 7 for that question. Okay, now let's go on to the next one. In question D, you've got 3 times x plus 2 in brackets, plus 2 times x minus 4 in brackets, equal to 5 times x minus 1 in brackets. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this equation as well. Okay, so let's go through that question. So I need to multiply out here. So I've got 3 times x, that is 3x. Then 3 times 2 is plus 6. Then over here I've got 2 times x, that is plus 2x. 2 times negative 4 is minus 8. That's equal to 5 times x, which is 5x, and 5 times negative 1, which is minus 5. Okay, so now I need to get my x's on one side. So I'm going to have over here 3x plus 2x, and then this 5x needs to get rid of by subtracting 5x. So I'm going to subtract 5x on this side as well. Then I've got that equal to negative 5, and then I need to subtract 6 over here, so I'm going to subtract 6 on the right. And I need to add 8 over here, so I'm going to add 8 on the right. Okay, so I've got 3x plus 2x minus 5x. That all cancels out, giving me 0, equal to negative 5 minus 6 plus 8, that is negative 3. But now I've got a problem because I don't have an x anymore because the x is all cancelled out, and this is not equal. 0 is not equal to negative 3. So this is an example of a question where we have no solution. There is no solution for this equation. There's no value of x that will make this equation true because the x's will always cancel out, and 0 is never going to be equal to negative 3. Okay, so that's what we should have got for question D, that there is no solution. Right, the next question, we've got 3 times x plus 4 minus 4 times 2x minus 1 equal to 3 times x minus 6 plus 6 times x plus 2 minus 8x. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to solve this equation. Okay, so let's go through that question. So first I'm going to multiply out my brackets. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is plus 12. Negative 4 times 2x is negative 8x. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4 equals 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. 6 times x is positive 6x. And 6 times 2 is plus 12. And then I've got minus 8x. So now once I've multiplied everything out, I need to get all my x's on one side and all my constants on the other side. So I've got on the left hand side over here 3x minus 8x. And then over here, I need to get rid of the 3x. So I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides. I need to get rid of the 6x. So I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. And I'm going to get rid of the negative 8x by adding 8x on both sides. Okay, so now over here, I've got on the right-hand side, negative 18, then plus 12. And I need to get rid of this 12 over here by subtracting on both sides. And I'm going to get rid of the 4 over here by subtracting 4 on both sides as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go and simplify. So over here, I've got 3x and minus 3x. Those are going to cancel each other out. And negative 8x and positive 8x are also going to cancel each other out. So with the x's, I'm just left with this negative 6x. That is equal to negative 18 plus 12 minus 4. The positive and negative 12s are going to cancel each other out, leaving me with negative 18 minus 4, which gives me negative 22. Okay, so now I need to go and divide by the negative 6. So I've got x equal to a negative divided by negative is positive, and then 22 over 6. But I can't leave it like that because that can be simplified. So therefore x is equal to 22 over 6. I can simplify that by dividing by 2, and that gives me 11. Divide that by 2, and it gives me 3. So I get 11 over 3. So that's what we should have got for question E, that x is equal to 11 over 3. Okay, let's go on to the next one. For question F, we've got in brackets x plus 2 multiplied by x minus 3 in new brackets. That's equal to x minus 3 in brackets multiplied by x plus 3 in brackets. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this equation. Okay, so let's go through that question. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go and multiply out. Now here I've got a binomial multiplied by a binomial. So you need to remember the method we need to use when multiplying two binomials together. So I'm going to multiply the first term in the first set of brackets by the first term in the second set. So I've got x times x, that's x squared. Then I multiply the first term by the second term in the second set. So that gives me x times negative 3 is minus 3x. Then I multiply the next term in the first set by the first term in the second set. So I've got positive 2 times x is positive 2x. And then I do the second term in the first set of brackets multiplied by the second term in the second set of brackets. So it's positive 2 times negative 3, that's negative 6. So remember, when you're multiplying binomials, you multiply each term in the first set of brackets by each term in the second set of brackets. Okay, and that's equal to, okay, now on this side over here, we've got x minus 3 times x plus 3. Now I hope that you remembered that when you've got two sets of brackets that we multiply together where they're binomials and they look the same except for a plus and a minus in the middle, then you can use a shortcut. And the shortcut for this is I can multiply the first term in each set of brackets together. So it's x times x is x squared. And then I don't need to multiply this together, giving me 3x, and this giving me negative 3x, because they're going to cancel each other out. So then I can go on to multiplying the last term in each set of brackets together. That gives me negative 3 times 3 is minus 9. Okay, so now I'm going to go and get all my x's on one side and all the constants on the other side. So I've got x squared minus 3x plus 2x and then minus x squared equals, on this side I've got negative 9 and then plus 6. Now over here, the x squared and the minus x squared are going to cancel each other out, which means you don't need to worry about x squareds in the equation. Okay, so I've got negative 3x plus 2x, that is negative x, equals negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3, and then I can get rid of that negative by dividing by negative 1 on both sides, and that gives me x equals 3. So that's what you should have got for question F. Okay, now this particular example over here is the first time you've had an equation that had an x squared in it. But because the x squareds cancelled each other out, it wasn't a problem, so we were able to just solve it as normal. And so it turned out to still be what we call a linear equation. All of the equations we've done so far have been linear equations, which means that they have one solution for x. Okay, there's one value of x that solves the equation. But now we're going to go on to examples where we have more than one solution, more than one value of x that can satisfy the equation. Okay, now we're going to go and look at a different kind of equation with brackets. We're going to go on to a product of factors that is equal to 0. That means, remember, product means multiplication. So this means we have at least two things that are being multiplied together and they equal 0. Okay, so when you get an equation which has a product of factors equal to 0, the first thing you need to know is that if the product of two or more factors is 0, at least one of the factors must be 0. Because remember, the only way you're going to get 0 if you multiply things together is if one of those things was 0 to start with. You can't multiply anything together and get a 0 if you didn't have a 0 to start with. Okay, so when you've got a product of two or more factors and that product is 0, then it means that at least one of the factors must have been 0 to start with. So what we're going to do when you get an equation like this is you're not going to multiply it out. You are going to take each of the factors and you're going to put them equal to 0. So you're going to write each factor in the equation as equal to 0, and then you solve each of those equations separately. So you will then have more than one equation, which you will then go and solve separately, finding different possible values for x. And once you've found all the possible solutions for x, you then need to write the final answer. The solutions are all the values of x that make the original equation true. The final answer needs to include all of the possible solutions. Okay, so let's have a look at an example like this. So in this example, we've got x plus 3 in brackets times 2x minus 5 in brackets equal to 0. Okay, so now this one is different to any of the ones we've had before. We've got two things that have been multiplied together and it's equal to 0. When you get an equation like this, you are not going to multiply out. So this is completely different to what we've been doing in all the other equations we've done today. In all of the other ones, the first step was always multiply out, get rid of the brackets. But when you have an equation like this where you've got a set of brackets times another set of brackets equal to 0, you're not going to do that. Okay, so if we're not going to multiply it out, let's have a look and see what we are going to do. Okay, so like I said over here, I'm not going to multiply this out. What I'm going to do is, remember we said if you've got two things that are multiplied together that are equal to 0, at least one of them has to have been equal to 0 to start with. So that means that this had to be 0 or this had to be 0 in order for you to get 0 when you multiply them together. Okay, so what we can say is x plus 3 must be equal to 0 or 2x minus 5 must be equal to 0. They can both be equal to 0, but at least one of them must be equal to 0, because the only way you can get 0 when you multiply them together is if one of them was 0 to start with. Okay, so what we're going to do is now we've got two little equations here. We need to solve each of these little equations. So in this one over here, I've got x plus 3 equals 0. All I need to do is get the 3 to the other side of the equation. So it's going to be x equals, and I subtract 3 on both sides to get rid of it over here. So that's going to be negative 3. So the solution for this one over here is x is negative 3. For this one, I need to get rid of the negative 5 by adding 5 on both sides. So I'm going to have 2x equal to 5. And then I divide by 2 on both sides, and that gives me x equals 5 over 2. So now I've got two possible solutions. X can be -3, but x could also be 5 over 2, and either one of those will make this equation true. So now I need to write my final answer. So therefore, x is equal to -3, or x is equal to 5 over 2. So that's what we should get for that example. So now I'm going to give you a couple that you're going to do for yourself. Here's the first one you're going to do. You've got to solve for x. If you have 2x minus 1 in brackets multiplied by x plus 4 in brackets equal to 0. I'm going to give you 1 minute to solve this equation. Okay, so let's go through that question. So, like I said, we're not going to multiply this out over here. What I'm going to do is, because I've got a factor multiplied by another factor equal to 0, is I'm going to take each of those factors, I'm going to make them equal to 0 separately. So I've got 2x minus 1 equal to 0, or x plus 4 equal to 0. Okay, so now I'm going to go and solve for x over here. I've got 2x minus 1. I need to get rid of this minus 1 by adding 1 on both sides. So that gives me 2x equal to 1. And then I need to divide by 2 on both sides. So I get x equal to 1 over 2, or a half. And then for this one over here, I'm going to get rid of the 4 by subtracting 4 on both sides. So that gives me x equal to -4. So now I need to go and write my final answer. So therefore I can say x is equal to a half, or x is equal to -4. So that's what you should have got for question A. Right, let's go on to the last question for today. We've got for question B, x plus 2 in brackets times x minus 3 in brackets times 3x plus 2 in brackets. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to solve this equation. Okay, so let's go through that question. So for this one, I've got 3 factors that are being multiplied together and equal to 0. It doesn't matter that there are 3 factors. The process is exactly the same for 3 factors as for 2 factors. I'm still going to say that at least one of these must be equal to 0 in order for me to get 0 when I multiply them together. That means that this one could be 0, or that one could be 0, or that one could be 0, which means I need to find a solution from each of these. So I have x plus 2 equal to 0, or x minus 3 equal to 0, or 3x plus 2 equal to 0. Okay, so I have to work with all 3 of them, but doing the exact same thing as what I did when I had 2 factors equal to 0. So now, x plus 2 equals 0, I need to get rid of the 2, so I subtract on both sides. That gives me x equal to negative 2. Over here, x minus 3 equal to 0, so I need to add 3 on both sides, so that gives me x equals 3, and over here 3x plus 2, I need to subtract 2 on both sides, so I've got 3x equals negative 2, and then I need to divide by 3 on both sides, so that gives me x equals negative 2 over 3. So now my final solution, therefore, x equals negative 2, or x equals 3, or x equals negative 2 over 3. And that's what you should have got for question B. And that's how we solve equations with brackets. Now that we've learned the concepts in this lesson, it's important to practice, practice, practice. If you haven't already got the worksheet that goes with this video, you can find it by clicking on the link in the description below. The worksheet comes with an extra exercise full of questions for you to work on to master the concepts covered in this lesson. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button so that others can benefit from it too. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you can easily find my other lessons, and hit the bell so that you will get notified about lessons as I upload them.